Hello, hello, hello. This is Els coming to you from Bemis Crafty Corner, and today we're going to talk about this hat. These are the pieces that I pulled off of here. There was a piece here at the top, and this was at the bottom down here, and this is all just hot glued on. So I just pulled it all off, and I did use my heat gun, my heat tool, but you have to be careful doing that because this is a heat-formed hat. And because these are formed by getting the felt wet and then heating it under pressure and putting it on a form, you could actually disrupt the form of the hat. So we do want to be careful using the heat gun. So once I have everything off, then I can just kind of pull off the hot glue. And I'm not too terribly worried about it because most of the hat's going to get recovered with something else. So I'm not terribly worried that I'll be damaging the hat in any way. But we're just, see, it's just hot glue. It'll peel right off. And if you have to, just hit it real quick with your heat gun just to warm it up, and it'll make it a little easier to pull it off. But we're going to get all of this taken off of here, and when we're all done, we're going to start building a steampunk hat using this as our base, okay? So let's get started. Layering. So the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that I had a hat band. So I took my tape measure out and I did some measurements. And the first one takes it at about 23 inches around. So I know it's going to be about 23 inches. And then I went ahead and I measured the side here, which is about 4¼ inches. So I know that I've got 4¼ inches to work with, and I've got to have something that's going to fit at about 23 inches around. Originally, I wanted some damask, like some kind of brocade or something, like a really nice upholstery that I could use that would be a little flashy. And I've selected 3 colors for this hat. I'm trying to kind of stick to blue, white, and black for this one. And that way the brass kind of pops off of it. The metal work will pop off. And I couldn't find anything that I wanted. So then I found this, that Amy and I saw it. And it looks like real, feels like cowhide. And we thought, that's kind of in the genre. The cowhide would be in the genre. So we went ahead and we grabbed 1/4 yard of this. Now this is rolled upholstery fabric. It comes on the big rolls. And, you always feel bad when you carry that giant roll up there. Which, by the way, I must say, nobody was injured in the movement of that roll of fabric. And we took it up there, and I kind of felt bad because they had like this big thing they have to put it in, and they have to fit it through and everything. And the lady's like, okay, so how much can I cut for you? And I was like, 1/4 yard. I felt really bad, but I did it anyway. Because I don't really want a whole lot of this. I don't know. I've got enough left. I could do a book cover, and I might do a book out of it just so I don't feel so guilty. But I cut a piece that is 4 inches, and this one is 24 inches, and I only needed 23. But I'm going to pop this back about 1 inch on either side, and I'll show you what we're going to be doing. Because we're going to be using some eyelets for this, but not the kind of eyelets that we usually use in paper crafting. I'm going to be using eyelets that are designed for fabrics and like canvas and things. And then I have to line this, so I have some unbleached heavyweight muslin. This is just really thick muslin, and so I'm going to be using this as the backing for this. Manageable piece of muslin, and my strip. And this doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm kind of eyeballing everything. And basically, I'm just going to kind of cut around this. Now, I wouldn't do this if I was actually like, making a garment or something. But considering this is just for a hat band, and I don't want it to be perfect anyway, this works. Okay. Okay, so now I have my 2 strips. And these should be roughly the same size. See that? thing of beauty. Now, I have a piece of heat and bond. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of heat and bond. That's about 3 inches wide, give or take. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to cover sort of the inside. So I'm going to be ironing the heat and bond onto the muslin, and then I'm going to be removing the backing and then stitching, and then I'm going to heat the whole thing so that it then bonds to the piece. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is going to be sewn face down on my muslin. And I'm going to leave a little piece towards the middle here where I can turn the whole thing out. So if I were to put this on and then turn it out, you know, and iron it in, I would iron my fabric to it, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to iron this onto the muslin, and then I'm going to sew it together. I'm going to take this piece off, then sew it together, and then press the two pieces together, okay? All right. So I've ironed on my heat and bond, and I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. Now, normally, we would be making this into book cloth. So I'd be telling you to get out the tissue paper. But we're not doing that today. Nope. Today, we're going to make this into our hat band. So I'm going to take my piece of fabric that's going to be my hat band, and the side that has the heat and bond, I'm going to put the heat and bond face down, and then I'm going to put the fabric, and what will happen is when this all turns, the heat and bond will be on the inside, as will the back of this piece, okay? Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide where my turn point is going to be, and I'm going to be placing some pins. I'm going to give myself about 2-3 inches here. Okay, that's going to be my turn point. It's going to be the point that I turn this inside out. And then I'm going to take some more pins, and I'm just going to put a few pins in here just to hold everything in place while I run this through the machine. Okay. Okay, I'm going to apologize in advance if this looks like an earthquake. Okay? So basically I have my fabric, my 2-layer fabrics in here. I have my pins facing towards my needle so that I can pull them out as it approaches. I have threaded my machine, and I'm going to drop my presser foot down, and then I'm going to hold onto my thread while I drop my first stitch. And to do that, all I'm going to do is just turn the knob on the right of my machine towards me. Now I control the speed of the machine with the foot pedal that's on the floor. So I'm going to take the first pin out, and I've got about 1/4 of an inch. It is about 1/4 of an inch from my needle to the end of my presser foot underneath here. So that's how I'm going to judge everything. And I do apologize, you guys can't get a better look at this. It is really hard to film a sewing machine. So as I come to that line, I'm going to drop the needle in, and I'm going to lift the presser foot and turn my fabric. And then I'm going to go ahead and take out my pins here. I'm going to put my presser foot back down, and then I'm going to go ahead and stitch here to about that 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to manually, by turning the handle towards me, drop the needle again, and then I'm going to pick up the presser foot and turn. Okay, and I want to be at about that 1/4 of an inch. So, you know, it might take me a couple of tests to get it there. Okay, perfect. So, now that we're done, we're going to take a pair of scissors. We're going to nip off any long threads. And then we're going to be using fabric scissors. And we are going to cut on a diagonal here on our corners. Now I want the extra meat of this on the inside for the next part. So now we're going to turn this right side out. And I'm going to get out a little tool here that I like to use to do this. Just a pair of hemostats. Makes my life a little easier, so I don't have to shove my fat fingers in there. I'm just going to grab a piece of the end, lock it up, and bring it back. And this just makes my life easier to turn this right side out. Okay. And now we can use a ruler or you know, a paint stick or whatever we've got, just to kind of push this down. And what we want to do is we want to create those corners so we get it nice and square. So you may have to work it a little bit. All right. So I've got the fabric in there laying flat, and I have my piece. I'm going to tuck this in that 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to tuck this piece in that 1/4 of an inch. Now this can be hand stitched, or you can do it on the machine, whichever you prefer. And I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to make sure that I get this nice and wide, and using my hand to manipulate this, I'm going to make sure that I lay it as flat as possible when I press that heat and bond. I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. Now, as you can see, this is fairly rigid at this point, so it's given me some nice stability. And this is my open piece here. So I'm going to show you how to stitch this up. I have a needle and thread, and all I'm going to do is come inside, and what I'm doing is going underneath that flap of fabric. Doesn't matter which side I go under, but I want to come up right on the fold, okay? And just bring that through. And because I'm right-handed, I'm going to keep it in my right side. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch right here, a little stitch right on the fold. Little stitch on the fold on the other side, and I'm just going to keep doing that all the way down, about 1/4 of an inch long strip stitching, and that is going to hide that seam for me. Now if you don't want to do this part, you can at most fabric stores, you can get what's called an iron-on hem or basting tape, and you can just put a piece of it in there and iron the two pieces together. It's like glue, or use some Fabri-Tac if that's your thing, and that will work as well. But I'm going to go ahead and finish sewing up this little section that I have left open here, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about how this is going to get affixed to the hat. So now we have a hat band, and when we put it on our hat, it does not go all the way across the back. So there's a couple of things that we can do. One, we could use some kilt pins to bring the two ends together across the back here, which would be very classic. Or we can do what I am going to do, and that is I am going to make this a corset band. So I'm going to be putting some eyelets along the ends here, and then I'm going to lace this with some ribbon. So I am going to go and cut my holes and all of that good stuff. I'm going to show you how this is done. So once again, we're going to be using our water-soluble marker and a ruler. We're just going to get an idea of how wide this is. So we're at about 3 inches from end to end. It's about 3 1/4. So that gives me 9/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go 3/4 of an inch. So one at the top at about 1/4 of an inch. One at the bottom at 1/4 of an inch. That leaves me 7. Then I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch, 2/4 of an inch, 2/4 of an inch, and then 2/4 of an inch takes me to the middle. And I'm going to have 5 brads. Excuse me, 5 eyelets. So I'm going to be popping some holes here. Now, because this is fabric, I can't use regular pliers. These are leather pliers, and they're designed to go through leather and fabric and stuff, and this is what I'm going to be using to pop the holes today. But I say really nasty words when I use these, so I'm going to do it off camera. I'll be right back with some holes. Alright, so we have all of the holes. So we marked the first ones with a ruler, and then all we did was we folded this in half, lined it all up, and then using the water-soluble marker, we went ahead and made our next set of lines. So these eyelets are a little different. They're much thicker, they're longer in the shaft, and they do have a back piece. Now these ones on the very ends are going to be the hardest ones to do, and I'm using a regular pair of eyelet pliers, and they are designed for this type of an eyelet. And I'm going to squeeze with everything that I have to get this set, especially here on the end, because this is so thick. The rest of these won't be quite so hard to do, but the first one's going to be a little bit difficult. Those ones on the ends, because they are thicker there. So I'm going to get all these set, and once I have these all in place, then we're going to move on to the next step, which is actually putting this on our piece. So now the brads are set. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of ribbon, and we're going to decide what's the top and what's the bottom. And I'm going to make this my top. So I'm going to put my ribbon through. Now, these brads are not designed for ribbon, so, you know, they may not be the cleanest, so be careful when you're pulling your ribbon through that you don't, like, drag it on the metal and destroy it, okay? So we're going to find the middle of our ribbon. kind of where we want this to be, and it's going to be a little bit wider, so we're going to leave it open a little bit, and we're just going to crisscross lace this like you would a corset. You know, or a pair of shoes. Skipping one. Skipping one. And I am going from the back to the front so that when my piece comes out in the end, it's coming out the top. Don't worry about fraying the edges. We'll make it all pretty in the end. Now, if you have a doll needle, that will make this a little easier to do, because you can just put the ribbon on the doll needle. You might want to use a thinner ribbon. You could use a fatter ribbon, whatever you want to do. This just happened to be the one that I grabbed. The end product will probably be a thinner ribbon, but this is what I had on hand, so it's what I'm using just to show you guys what we're doing. Through that one, and then finally down through this one. Okay, so now I have it corseted, and I'm going to put it over the pipe on my hat. I'm going to work it down. And then I'm going to lace this, get it straight. Go. I'm just gonna clip my ribbon. Straighten out my bow, you know, because I want it to look nice.
Sorry. Thank you for calling Cox Communications Business Technical Support. My name is Mike. How may I assist you?
So now I have a little bow on there, and I have my corseted back. Like I said, I'll probably go for a thinner ribbon. This is a 1 1/8, I think. So I'm probably going to go and see if I can get like a 3/4 inch, and I'll use that instead. But I do want to use the satin ribbon. And so now I have my corseted back on my hat band. My hat band is on. And now I can start building from here. So that is it for today, guys. Listen, if you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. I really would hope if you would hit that red button for me and subscribe. Like me, ring my bell, share me with all your friends, and your friends can be my friends, and my friends can be your friends, and our friends can get to be friends. Before you know it, we have a whole community going, guys. Next time, we're going to be working on the gear piece. Until then, stay safe. Bye-bye.